100,000 analysts and an AI prediction model teamed up to try to predict when the next crypto bull market would start. They also made predictions on things like how low will the price of Bitcoin go from here? How high will Bitcoin and ETH go next bull run? What's the likelihood of the Bitcoin ETFs getting approved before next summer, and more? And in this video, I'm going to dive into every prediction that they made and the results that they shared on what they think is going to happen, as well as make a few predictions of my own based on what I'm seeing in the space. If you've seen my video, Top 5 Cryptos to 100x According to AI, then you're probably pretty familiar with a company called Cindicator. For those of you who haven't though, I'll give you a brief recap of who they are and how their AI prediction model works. The AI was created back in 2015 by a bunch of data scientists who were trying to beat the market and accurately predict certain investment outcomes. Over the last 8 years, Cindicator has built a network of over 100,000 analysts who all compete for cash prizes trying to predict accurately certain outcomes for certain questions. The analyst is typically presented with a question like this: what will the price of Bitcoin be on December 31st, 2023? The analyst then goes and does their research. That can involve using TA, that could involve historical analysis, that could involve their gut intuition into what they think is going to happen with the market. However they decide to do the research, they come up with an answer to that question, and then they submit it on an app saying that they think, the price of Bitcoin on December 31st, 2023 will be $30,100.26, or whatever their answer they come up with. And that answer is submitted to the app and then tracked for its accuracy over time. So if they were really close to the actual price on December 31st, 2023, then they get a really high score and the reputation goes up. But if they were really far off, like they were just leagues and miles away from the accurate, actual price that Bitcoin was on December 31st, 2023, then they get a really low rating and their ranking goes down. And obviously the analysts that are the most accurate win the highest prizes and make the most money. And over time, these analysts who have a long history and track record of being accurate with their predictions have their predictions weighed more highly. In fact, there's an entire subset of these users who are insanely accurate over a long period of time called super forecasters. After all the predictions are submitted from all the analysts, the AI then takes that high quality data and then uses its own algorithm, which improves and grows over time, to spit out one final prediction. And I was given the opportunity to submit my own questions to this AI, and my goal was to try to predict when the next bull market would start. Obviously, that would be some pretty useful information as an investor in the space for me to know, when is the next crypto bull market actually going to start? What is the all-time high price going to be for Bitcoin? What is the low price going to be between now and then of Bitcoin, so that I could have some sort of indicator on when's a good time to buy and start accumulating, and when's a good time to maybe sell, at the peak of the next bull market. So originally my question that I submitted, obviously to, for this experiment was, when is the next bull market going to start? And I sent that over to the team and I said, this is my question. Can you run it through the AI and have it tell me when the next bull market's going to start? The team responded by rejecting my question because it had too many difficult to define variables. For example, the team pointed out what qualifies as a crypto bull run. What qualifies as the start of a crypto bull run? Like, what is the distinct moment or thing that qualifies as the start of a bull run? Is a bull run when most tokens are going up in price? Is it when Bitcoin passes its old all-time high? Maybe a bull run is when the price of Bitcoin goes up by 50% or more, in which case this whole last year we've been in a bull run. You get the idea. When it comes to directly quantifying what is a bull run, it's not exactly cut and dry. So I ended up settling on a set of questions that would help me determine when the next bull run would start. With my foundational question being, when will the total crypto market cap surpass its old all-time high? And I figured while that might not be the exact start of the crypto bull run, that was definitely a surefire way for me to determine when we had entered a crypto bull run. And I asked a few other questions as well to really dial in on when will the next bull market end up starting. The first question that I asked was, what will be the lowest price of Bitcoin from now until Bitcoin reaches a new all-time high? I asked this one because Bitcoin kind of ends up being an index of the overall crypto market. So when Bitcoin's going up, the general market's going up. And when Bitcoin's going down, the general market's going down. So if we could determine what was going to be the lowest, absolute lowest price between now and then, we could identify the absolute best time between now and then to jump into the market. And for this first question, I was given two answers. One answer using all the data from all the analysts, and one answer refined down to just the data from all the super forecasters. It's important to note that both answers were ultimately spit out by the AI. It's just they first fed the AI, all the data from all the analysts, and then the AI used its own algorithm and spit out a prediction. And then they second fed the AI just the data from the super forecasters, and then the AI used its own algorithm and spit out another prediction. And AI is obviously only as good as the data you feed it. And really quick, obviously none of this is investment advice. None of this is me telling you you should do these things. You should always do your own research, and blindly copying YouTubers is a quick way to lose all of your money. Using the broader data set from all the analysts, the AI said that the lowest that Bitcoin would go between now and when it surpasses its old all-time high was $21,441. The super forecaster refined dataset, however, spit out a different result of $18,375. Both answers suggest that we might see the market dip a little bit lower from here before we see it go higher. And my personal take based on my own research for a while now has been that we could always revisit the market bottom that we saw back in last November. So for ETH, we might go back down to 1,000. For Bitcoin, we might go back down to 15,000. I don't know that we will do those things. I'm definitely not saying we certainly will do those things. I've just always been prepared that that was a possibility. We might have a shakeout where prices go back down to the bottom, test it one last time before we actually start climbing. But for me, the thought of prices going lower and us revisiting the bottom doesn't super bother me. What's it matter if between now and then prices go lower before they skyrocket higher? It doesn't. I'll still make a lot of money as the final end result. It sounds like though, based off of this data, that if Bitcoin's at $25,000 or below, especially if it's close to 21,000 or maybe 18,000, that's a great place to start accumulating and buying into the market, depending on how high Bitcoin's going to go next cycle, which leads to the next question. What will be the highest price Bitcoin will hit between now and December 31st, 2025? And I asked this trying to give myself an idea of how high Bitcoin could go next cycle. Are we going to see another bull cycle like we saw back in 2021? Is this going to be like more of a muted bull cycle where things kind of take off, but it's not really that exciting? People don't really make fortunes. They more like makes, a little bit of money. And it's really not much to show for all of this pain and misery that we've been suffering through over the last 2 years. Or is it going to be spectacular and amazing, maybe even bigger than the last bull cycle? How big? What is the scale of this cycle going to be? I was again given two different answers using the two different data sets, one the broader data set and one the super forecaster data set. And the first data set, the broader data set, predicted that between now and December 31st, 2025, the highest price that Bitcoin would reach would be $103,369. And using the super forecaster dataset, the AI predicted that the highest price Bitcoin would reach between now and December 31st, 2025 would be $112,500. Now, over the past year, we've seen different analysts, different kind of celebrities in the space predict wild things for the price of Bitcoin. Some people have predicted Bitcoin's going to hit 200,000 before the end of this year. Some people have predicted Bitcoin's going to hit $1 million over this next cycle. Others have predicted it's going to hit 500,000 over next cycle. And this AI and these analysts, the data they're spitting out is saying that none of that is accurate, and that the Bitcoin this next cycle is likely to hit between 100,000 and 112,000, which I think is definitely interesting. And again, it's more of an indicator in your overall research. It doesn't mean that the AI is right. Just because the AI says this could happen doesn't mean that it will happen. This AI has a high degree of accuracy. Over the last 8 years, it has been eerily accurate, and it definitely gets the predictions right more than it gets them wrong. But it doesn't always get them right. So yeah, maybe Bitcoin does hit that high. Maybe it goes lower. Maybe it goes higher. We don't know for sure, but we do know that this is an indicator that we probably shouldn't outright ignore. My personal belief is both of those numbers sound pretty spot on if we don't account for the fact that we might see a Bitcoin ETF approved. If we see the Bitcoin ETFs approved, I think we could go significantly higher than 100,000 based off of the inflows from the ETF. For example, take a look at this chart. Look what happens to gold after it gets its first spot ETF approved. Obviously, this chart is pretty insane. You can see for years, gold was at a lower price, the ETF gets approved, and then it skyrockets in price. But I'll point out that it skyrockets over the years following the ETF approval, not all at once. When you look at the chart, you're like, oh man, it just immediately skyrockets. But when you really pay attention, that's like over a long period of time. If you were like living in the market during that time, that was a gradual process of gold really skyrocketing in price. So if an ETF for Bitcoin was approved, we wouldn't see, massive price appreciation all at once. but we could likely expect making it that much easier to invest in Bitcoin for funds, for financial advisors with their clients, would make it so that over the years following, there would be some heavy inflows into Bitcoin. With all that in mind, my next question was, will any of the Bitcoin ETFs be approved by March 31st, 2024? I've heard from traditional analysts on Twitter and in the news a range of different probabilities on how likely the ETFs are to get approved for Bitcoin. And on the low end, people say it's maybe a 70% chance that we see these Bitcoin ETFs approved. And on the high end, some people say there's about a 90% chance that we see these Bitcoin ETFs approved. When this question was submitted to the AI, though, the broader crowd indicator put the likelihood of these ETFs getting approved at 63.26%. And the super forecaster dataset put it even lower at 44.76%. Now, a note was included on these results that said, interpretation, indicators between 35% and 65% suggest that hybrid intelligence is uncertain about the likelihood of the event occurring. And to explain this prediction a bit, you need to understand a little bit about the mindset of these analysts who are, giving these predictions. The goal of the analysts is to increase their reputation on the platform and to win these cash prizes. And just like in poker, when you have a bad hand or an uncertain hand, sometimes the best thing to do is to just fold. So when there isn't a lot of raw data for these analysts to rely on and to feel safe in, sometimes the best way for these analysts to preserve their reputation is to fold their hand and stick their answer in the direct middle, which is obviously what ended up happening with this result. Based on my own personal research, though, I'm extremely optimistic about these ETFs getting approved. BlackRock holds an insane amount of power when it comes to DC, and they want to see this thing happen. They have, in their entire history of submitting over 500 ETF proposals, only ever had one ETF rejected. I was also recently at Permissionless, and I got to hear from one of the higher ups at one of these major institutions. And they said their own view was that unless they had 100% confidence that the ETF was going to be approved, they weren't going to even apply. And they had just recently applied for the Bitcoin ETF. There's also the fact that the SEC just lost a major case in court against Grayscale. In fact, the judge actually said that the SEC was acting arbitrary and capricious, meaning that based on the court case, the judge had determined that the SEC was just making up rules and had no good reason to have rejected the Bitcoin ETF in the Grayscale case, and that it either had to come up with an actual good reason to reject this ETF or approve it. I think all of these facts and the fact that just about every single major institution, every single major financial player in the space has applied for a Bitcoin ETF means that the SEC is going to have to approve these Bitcoin ETFs or have an insane, airtight reason as to why they're not approving these Bitcoin ETFs. Because if they reject them and they don't have an absolute airtight reason for rejecting them, they're going to see some insane court battles from some of the biggest players in the space. So again, this is one I personally disagree with. If I were to give it my own probability, I would say that we have an 80% chance or higher that we see these Bitcoin ETFs approved either by the end of this year or by early next year. Now, obviously, I'm personally more bullish about ETH than Bitcoin over the long term. So my next question was, what will be the highest price for ETH between now and December 31st, 2025? My personal belief has been that we could see ETH hit 10K to 20K next cycle, with 10K being the far more realistic and likely outcome, and 20K being more like a perfect storm, everything goes amazing outcome. And for the first prediction, using the broader set of data, the AI spit out $50,863. I'm just kidding. It didn't say that. Using the first broader data set, the AI spit out $7,641 as the all-time high price that ETH will achieve between now and December 31st, 2025. And using the super forecaster data set, the AI spit out that the highest price that ETH would achieve between now and December 31st, 2025 would be $6,000. Exactly. The number that they came up with is $6,000 exactly, which obviously both of those numbers are much, much lower than my own personal expectation. However, even with me personally believing that ETH could hit 10K to 20K next cycle, I would not outright dismiss this prediction. I would definitely say that, ETH only hitting 6,000 or ETH only hitting 7,000 next cycle is for sure a possibility. Those seem like realistic numbers. And, it's probably more likely that I would, with most of my money being in ETH, be more biased towards ETH hitting higher prices. That would be heavily beneficial to me. That's easier for me to believe that it would hit higher prices. So maybe my own bias is skewed, and that's why I have higher numbers and a higher prediction amount than, these analysts have. I would also say, on the other hand, that maybe it's possible that these analysts are relying heavily on historical data and historical outcomes, and maybe aren't quite as attuned to all the newer developments that have happened in the Ethereum space. I mentioned earlier that recently I went to Permissionless and I got to meet a lot of people, and Permissionless as a whole was heavily ETH focused. There was a lot of people who were heavily involved in the ETH community, and even among the direct Ethereum community, there wasn't as many people as I expected who understood how Layer 2s worked, how ETH generates revenue, and all the fundamental changes that have happened since the merge. So these analysts could be relying more heavily on past data and maybe not accounting for a lot of the changes that have happened, because it's kind of difficult to account for these changes that have happened because nobody really knows exactly what ETH will do come next bull run with these, having changed so fundamentally since the merge. ETH went from an inflationary asset to a deflationary asset that pays 4% to holders and generates revenue. Layer 2s are launching left and right, including Coinbase launching their own base Layer 2. And if you don't understand how Layer 2s work, Layer 2s are built on top of Ethereum, and when you do transactions on Layer 2s, those transactions are finalized on Ethereum Layer 1 and ultimately end up burning more and more ETH. Long story short, the more use that you see on Layer 2s and the more Layer 2s that grow, the more and more ETH that's going to be burned, and the better and better that is for Ethereum as an asset. Secondly, if we see a Bitcoin ETF approved, the next ETF that is the most likely to come after the Bitcoin ETF is, of course, an ETH ETF. All that being said, I still personally think a likely outcome is that we do see ETH hit around 10K to 20K next cycle. But if I'm wrong and it only hits 6K or 7K, that's not the end of the world. And the final question that I asked the AI was, when will the total crypto market cap surpass its old all-time high? Using the first broader data set, the AI predicted that on January 17th, 2025, we would see the total crypto market cap surpass its old all-time high. And using the second data set from the super forecasters, the AI predicted that we would see the total crypto market cap surpass its old all-time high on December 20th, 2024, which is about a month earlier than the broader dataset predicted. Which is crazy because surprisingly, both datasets seem to focus in on near the exact same time frame, which is only 1 year and 3 months from today. Meaning, if they're right, at some point over the next year and 3 months, we are going to see the total crypto market cap surpass its old all-time high. And again, this isn't one guy that believes this. This isn't my personal opinion that I'm just saying. This is two groups of analysts who over the past 8 years have had a consistent track record of making accurate predictions, especially the super forecasters who have had an eerily consistent track record of making the correct predictions. And these analysts are supplying this data to an AI that uses machine learning to get better and better at making more accurate predictions over time. And like I said earlier, the AI isn't 100% accurate, but over the past 8 years, it has been right more often than it's been wrong. And it predicts that at some point over the next year and 3 months, the total crypto market cap is going to surpass its old all-time high. The same all-time high that we saw at the peak of the last bull run. It also says that we're going to see new all-time highs for Bitcoin and ETH before December 31st, 2025. And if it's right about even one of these things, then that means we are going to see another crypto bull run at some point over the next 2 years. And if it happens to be right about all three of those things, then here's what that means. At some point over the next year and 3 months, we are going to see the crypto bull market enter a new bull run phase. And presumably we see that start to happen at some point after the next Bitcoin halving. So it's likely we see that start to take off at maybe late summer 2024. Meaning, assuming this is all correct, a year from today, we should be sitting in the middle of an insane run up in the market. From there, we'll see massive market growth where at some point, either in December of 2024 or January 2025, we will see the entire crypto market cap hit a new all-time high. Meaning if it's like past cycles, then in 2025, we should be at peak bull run hype and everything's just going crazy. And if it continues to be like past cycles, then that means October to December of 2025, we'll start to see the market slide and in 2026 we should see a major correction and enter another bear market. Now, I've disagreed with a couple of the answers that this AI gave, but I didn't dismiss any outright. After all, like I've said, this AI tends to be right more often than it's wrong. And my personal opinion on this last question is that it lines up perfectly with everything that I'm seeing with my own research. I've been saying for a while, and I'll continue saying, that I think personally we're likely to see a crypto bull run over 2024, 2025. So if I'm personally one indicator and the super forecaster dataset is another indicator and the wider crowd dataset is another indicator, all three indicators are saying that it is extremely likely that at some point in 2024, 2025, we're going to see a massive crypto bull run. But obviously it's up to you to make your own decision on what you believe. So let me know in the comments, do you think we're going to see a crypto bull run in 2024, 2025? If this video is helpful, make sure to hit that like button. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the little bell next to it to be notified each time I release a video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.